Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about going back to grad school full time in your 30s. I hope you all enjoy the conversation, but first I'm going to get some coffee because I haven't had any. Be right back. So we're going to go ahead and talk about my journey to going back to school in my 30s. So I hope you all probably noticed I'm trying to look cute for y'all, so I put on a little jacket. Hopefully I was successful in being cute. Anyway, so we're going to talk about going back to school in your 30s. So I just want to talk a little bit about my journey. I'm not going to do a full-fledged resume for you all. I don't want this to feel like an interview. That question. Tell us a little bit about yourself. So I'm not going to do that, but I will put some of my credentials and just some of the work that I've done and that I'll talk about briefly here. I'll put it down in the comments and then we can interact that way. You can ask me questions about my journey if you want to know more details. So first, I just wanted to talk about kind of my journey just in college and then making that transition of actually getting a second master's degree and going back to school full time at 32. So I do have a bachelor's degree in public relations. I decided that was going to be my major in college. I thought I was going to work in corporate America, and then I decided I wanted to do nonprofit. But then I was living on campus. I actually lived on campus all 4 years in college. And I was involved in hall council, which is student government for, we like to say residence halls, but for those who are not in the college setting, I'm going to say dorm just so we can all be on the same page. We used to call that the D word, so we didn't use it a lot, but I'm going to use it here. And if people are watching and they work in res life or residential life or housing, please forgive me. So, yes, so I lived in the dorms for 4 years, all 4 years in college. I enjoyed living on campus. I enjoyed being close by to things, just walking to class. Most of my friends lived on campus, so that was fun for me. So I was actually president of my hall government. So the dorm had a hall council, and I was president of that. So very involved. So I asked my hall director how she does what she does, working with college students, being our advisor. And that's where she told me about student affairs and working in higher education. So that's what I decided to do. I actually was nervous about graduate school right after college. So I actually decided to go into the Peace Corps. It was between Peace Corps and the Disney program, and I had got accepted to the Disney program, but I decided to do Peace Corps instead because it was a way for me to go out of the country. I enjoyed volunteering, and I was actually in the Federated States of Micronesia. And in the Federated States of Micronesia, there are 4 states, and I was on the state of Pohnpei. And I'll put some resources in down below. It was a 20-hour flight from North Carolina. And so I did the Peace Corps. I did that for a year and some change. And then I came back and I worked a little bit in my hometown. And then I decided to go to grad school because at that time I felt like I was ready and I wasn't scared to be in grad school. So, and again, I was 23 at this time, going back to school. That was fine. By the time I applied, got accepted, I was 24 when I started that program. That was 2 years in Minnesota. And then I actually worked for 6 years. And so in graduate school, I also lived in the residence halls or in the dormitories, and I was a graduate hall director. So I supervised resident advisors. So again, living on campus, that had been 6 years. So when I was looking at graduating from that first master's in college student affairs, I decided to stay in housing. So I moved to a full-time job where I was a hall director. I had 600 students in the 2 buildings that I supervised. I had 20 RAs that I supervised and 3 graduate students that I supervised. So that was a nice position for my first time out. But at that time, I remember it like it was yesterday. I rode up to the dorm where I lived because I had a nice apartment inside the dorm. I didn't stay in a dorm room like the students. I had an apartment. I actually had a 2-bedroom apartment in the dormitory, in the dorm. So, but I remember driving up and I was 27 and I said, I cannot live on campus anymore. So I actually made the change to academic advising. I did an internship in academic advising while I was in graduate school. So I made the shift to academic advising. So that's just a quick snapshot to get you a little caught up to me going back to school at 32. So after I decided to make the change and I did academic advising for 6 years, I started having discernment about my vocation. I was thinking I wanted to change vocations, and I thought I wanted to be a pastor. At the time, I was planning to be a pastor in the United Methodist Church. I'd started my ordination process, and the reason I had done this is because the city I was in, I had started going to a church, and they were doing things that I had never seen churches do before. They were doing HIV testing. They had Narcotics Anonymous meeting at the church. So they were giving individuals a safe place with no judgment to have HIV testing, to have NAA meetings. We were also going, there was a tent city in the city that we were in, and we were going out to give. I remember I went out and helped with giving out socks at the tent city. I didn't even know this was a thing, and it was like right across the street from me in some woods from where I was staying, and I didn't know this was happening. But our congregation was reaching out to these individuals in a way I had never seen churches do before, and that was very radical to me. It still is, in a sense, when I think back, when this was going on. This was 9 years ago for me. So there still aren't many churches doing that. So I was thinking, I'd like to do this, like this outreach full time. So I decided I was going to go back to school to be a pastor. So to be a pastor in the United Methodist Church, you have to go get your Master's of Divinity. And so I started looking at programs. There's 13 schools in the country that you could go to, and I started the ordination process. And I narrowed down my schools to 3 schools. So one piece of advice I would say, if you are going back to school at any point in your life, and even if you're starting college, so if you're 16, 17 and you're looking at this, I see a lot of college students do this, but I also recommend it for older individuals going back to school. Go to campus, do the campus tours, meet the people there, meet the professors, see the city if you're moving to a different city. Even if you live in the same city, I would still say go see campus, because a lot of times in college towns, there is like this invisible divide between what goes on campus and what goes on in the city. There are campuses across the country where that relationship is more intermingled, but that's not always the case. So I highly recommend, even if you live in the same city as where you're going to school, to go visit and to have a tour. So then you get the inside look. And the other thing is, if you're an older adult and you're going back to school, most times it's going to be a younger student. So probably 18, 19, 20. So a freshman through, senior, that is going to give you a tour. And so you get the inside view of kind of their thoughts on campus. And they have to study a lot of things about campus. So you're going to get a lot of history about the campus. And then you just get to meet some of the younger students and really get to hear college from their perspective. And then you just get to see the campus and interact with individuals on campus. So I highly, highly recommend that you go to visit. And most schools, particularly graduate schools, they're going to have visit days and multiple visit days. So then you get to come, you get to meet current students. Usually you get a free lunch or dinner, and you get to meet faculty and staff. And some programs you're going to get to sit in on a class. So I highly recommend that you visit those if you're able to. Also realizing that takes time to take off work and things like that. But if you can make a visit, I highly recommend it. The second thing is early outreach to your network. So as you're looking at schools, send out, if you're not on LinkedIn, I highly recommend that, because that's a great way to meet other people. And just, you can do a search on individuals that have gone to a certain school or are connected there. So within your network, even if you're not on LinkedIn, within your network, start asking if there's people who know other people who have gone to this school, or even if you know people who have gone to that school, start talking to them about their experience, knowing that your experience is not going to be like anybody else that you talk to, but they will have inside tips and tricks for you. So definitely reach out to your network and see if there's individuals who have gone to those schools. So I visited 3 different schools, and one was in DC, Washington, DC. One was in Atlanta, And then the other was in Durham, North Carolina, so Duke University. So I visited all three, and I decided on Emory University, which is in Atlanta. So I was excited. I was moving to Atlanta. I got accepted to my top choice. I had visited all three schools, and I got accepted. So prior to moving there, I also recommend the thing with going to visit the school is also you get to see the city, and if you can go ahead and maybe look at either houses if you're thinking about buying. There are some graduate students that go ahead and buy if you're going to be in a place for 2 or 3 years. I didn't have that financial means to buy a house, so I do recommend looking for apartments because it really was hard for me on a student budget to find a place in Atlanta, and I imagine that's the case in multiple cities. So I highly recommend visiting. Do your housing search early as soon as you know about that you're going to school. I had no idea. And at that point, I had lived in 5 different places. I had no idea it would be so hard in the city. And Atlanta is the largest, still is the largest place I've lived in. But I never knew how hard it was going to be to find housing. I got accepted in December. And so when I got to Atlanta in the summer, because I ended up working a little bit in Atlanta before I started school, I I had to move 2 or 3 times. It was also hard. I don't know if it was because I was an older student. I have a friend who struggled with finding housing in Atlanta as well. So I don't know if that's only 2 people, only, a sample size of two. But it was really hard for me to find housing. And I actually moved every year looking for housing, trying to find the best housing, most affordable housing. So I ended up moving every year because the program was 3 years long. And I moved every year. And I didn't like that. So even with the housing debacle things starting off in Atlanta, I was still excited to be in school. But one thing I would say is for you all to work as long as you can. If you are in a program where you just need to be full time in the graduate program, or even as an undergraduate, if you need to be full time in school, I would say work as long as possible full time if you already have a full time job. I did not do that. I wanted to have the summer to myself, so I ended up quitting my job in May. I resigned in May, and then I had the summer. I had saved up money, and I used the summer to do a little bit of traveling. I didn't do a lot because I wanted to save my money, but that was a mistake for me. I should have kept working in my full-time job up until a week or two before it was time for me to go back to school and move to Atlanta. So I would highly recommend to work as long as possible. And then, I mean, the other decision is some of you may decide that you want to work full time and still go to school. For those of you, if you haven't watched my first video or my second video, I'd say go back and watch those because I talk about being a PhD student right now. And I actually work full time and I'm a part-time PhD student. So, and I have enjoyed this because at first I was able to decompartmentalize my school and my work, like it wasn't consuming me. Now I'm at the point where I'm trying to really, really hard intertwine the two. So research that I'm doing in my PhD program, how can I relate that to my work? And then work, how can I relate that to my PhD program? So you really have to think about if you want to do that full time. But with the cost of graduate school and just higher education in general, I highly recommend if you have the time and the energy, because that's the other piece of it, my recommendation is to work full time and take your classes slowly. It just depends on how quickly you're trying to move, if it's a credential that you need to move on to the next thing that you want to do. It just depends on your timing. But if you can work full time and also do school, I highly recommend it because it just gives you multiple layers to your life. It's not all about school, it's not all about work. It gives you multiple things to kind of invest your time in. So that's just a recommendation for me. Again, I was going back to school. Working full time and going to school wasn't an option for me when I was getting my Master's of Divinity at Emory University. So I also understand that that's not always an option, but it is something to think about. So I started school and I was excited, but immediately what we call imposter syndrome moved in. I was 32. Most of my classmates were straight out of college. They were 22, some were 21 if they had graduated early. And these were bright people. I am a bright student, but I also have not done a degree in religious education in New Testament, Old Testament. So not all of my classmates were in that situation. And I also had classmates that were older than me. So I can't imagine what it was like for, individuals who were older. So, and our average class size, if I'm not mistaken, was about 27. And there was 100 and some of us that started in my first year cohort. So, but in classes with me, I felt like everybody was 20 something. So I really felt out of my element. But I did end up meeting other people who were in their 30s, and that made the world of difference just because we were all in a different life stage. This was also my second master's. So I was coming into this with a different mindset. This wasn't my first master's. I had been in grad school before, but I was excited to move to another city. But imposter syndrome still reared its ugly head, and I was like, oh my goodness, all of these young folks around me, younger folks around me, and it really took a toll on me because I didn't feel like I was adequately prepared for the rigor of the program. So, and I hadn't done religious studies, again, Old Testament, New Testament, biblical studies. So I didn't feel prepared, and I really had to do a lot of work. So my first year was just not feeling adequate enough. And so what I want to say, and I want you to listen to me closely, you are enough in the program that you're in or that you're planning to go to. No matter what is going on, you have already done the work to get there, so you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. Let me say that again for the people in the back. You don't have to prove yourself to anybody. And I wish someone had sat me down and said that to me like I just said that to you. But it took me that first year to really realize that this is only a small time frame in my larger life journey. Those 3 years at Emory University did not make or break my full career or all the things that I want to do in life. And at the time, it felt like it was, but it really was not. So you have done so many more things before you go back to school if you decide to go full time, and you will do so many things after it. So that's what I want to say to you is this is the place where you are supposed to be now if you make that decision. And don't let anything or anyone, including yourself, help make you question if this is where you're supposed to be. And again, this is only a small time frame in a larger journey for you. You did great things before you got into grad school. You'll do great things after. You'll do great things during grad school. So just remember that this is only a certain time frame, a little small portion of your life. Another piece of advice is don't be so caught up in grades, because I think sometimes that clouds our judgment and then just how much time we spend on coursework, because there's other things going on in our life. Being a student is not the only thing we have going on in our life. So I say that I have an A average in my current PhD program. So I understand I say that even with an A average, but it has never been about grades for me. When it comes to preparing for class, I want to read enough. I do not read every piece of information. There are tons of videos and research on skimming and ways to work smarter, not harder. I highly recommend those. But I am not reading every piece of information that my professors give me. But I'm reading enough and engaging with the material enough that I can come to class prepared. And if there's questions, because I'm the type of student, I want to be engaged in class. The professors have worked hard on what they're teaching us, prepping their syllabi, so I want to be prepared. And so what that includes is not me taking an enormous amount of time to do my work and looking at it and trying to be perfect with it, but I engage with my work and I'm prepared, and then I do quality work, and that has resulted in me getting A's. Me getting an A is not what I started my PhD for, to get straight A's. I've always come to education as I'm wanting to learn more things. There's something I want to learn. There's pieces in the educational program that I'm doing that will enhance what I do already. So that's why I come to my PhD. That's how I come to my PhD work. It's not about me getting straight A's, because ultimately, if I decide to be a professor after this PhD, they're not going to look at my grades. They're going to look at my research. They're going to look at other things that I have going on. It won't be the grades that are the top thing for them. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that if there's this mindset of I'm doing this to enhance what I already know, it's a different way of looking at things than I need to make A's. I need to have this certain GPA. So, and it's actually more of a calming, I feel like, more of a calming way to approach higher education, is that how can I get the most out of this and really enjoy this and enjoy what I'm learning and what I'm engaging with. So that's what I highly recommend to kind of to think about. And hopefully that will help kind of push imposter syndrome out, particularly in graduate school, but also undergraduate, working with on your bachelor's. I have college students all the time that we bring up, we talk with them about imposter syndrome, and they talk about it, and they know that they feel it in the classrooms or as they're on campus. So it is real. It is real for a variety of individuals. But just know that you are there for a reason. You've already done the work to be there, so you deserve to be there wherever there is, whatever program you're looking at, whatever program you're in, you deserve to be there. So I think I will end there. I hope you enjoyed learning more about me going back to school in my 30s. If there was anything you want more information about, or if there's ideas for an upcoming video, please put those in the comments. I love hearing from you all. Actually, my next video is from a comment that someone made on a previous video. So they asked, do you need a college degree to be successful? And they also asked, what have I learned from college students? Because I have worked with college students for over 15 years now. And what have I learned? And I thought those were great questions. So that's actually going to be my next video. And I think that works well with the conversation that we just had about going back to school. So next video, I will talk about if you need a college degree, kind of my thoughts on that, if you need a college degree to be successful, and then also what I've learned from college students. So I'm excited to reflect on these two things and then to come back with you and talk with you in the next video. So if you have any comments, please put those in the comments section. I also hope you will subscribe, and please talk about in the comments if you've gone back to school in your 30s or even your 20s, because if you're in your late 20s, that's very different than going to, being full-time in your early 20s, 22, 23 after undergrad. So if you've gone back to school as a grad student, or if you're going back to school for your bachelor's, please talk about that. And any advice or questions you have, I would love to hear those. So I will see you all next time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Go watch my other videos if you haven't already. And I'll see you later. Peace.